Whose idea was it to give my 10-month-old M&Ms? Why the team I drafted from the Old Testament can't have cheerleaders? And Sour Patch Kids as a cereal? Come on. All that and more on episode 2 of the C3 Sit Down. Hey, what's up, C3 family and beyond? I am Joe Chafin, and alongside me is the pastor of Crescent Community Church, Pastor Josh Chafin. If you listened to our podcast last week, we appreciate it. We got a decent amount of views on our first one. We're hoping to continue to grow the podcast, to continue to provide content for everybody throughout the week, from the C3 family, like I said, to beyond, and hopefully make an impact to lead people towards Jesus. So, Josh, it's been about a week since we last talked on our podcast. What has kind of been going on in the life of Pastor Josh through, obviously no services, no Bible studies at the church, no in-person contact? What's kind of been going on for the last week or so for you?
Spent a little bit of time at my wife's parents' house. As some of you might know, and some listening may not be aware, a couple days before Christmas last year, my wife's mom had a massive stroke and was in a coma for a few weeks. And coming out of that, the recovery's been slow, but we're praising God, and we're thankful that here soon she's going to be released from the nursing home where she's been rehabbing. And so that means that their house, my in-laws' place, needs to sort of be prepared for that, handicap accessible, those sorts of things. And
is it like a huge overhaul?
Well, they're not probably not going to
redoing the kid,
no, just minor things. Really, just spent a few days there helping Amy's dad get a few things accomplished around the house that needed to be done, that he wants to make sure is done before his wife Linda comes home, because when she does, it's going to require a lot of his time.
And Amy's house has a lot of land, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, they're on like over 100 acres.
So at least he's retired, so he's able to
right
tinker around out there and kind of keep all of that stuff. Because
exactly.
Obviously he's making a bunch of trips to see Linda.
Well, she's in Mount Vernon now. She got moved, so she's closer to home, so he can see her pretty well whenever he wants to and needs to. So this was just a trip just to spend a few days with him, do a little bit outside work, which is nice because it was warm and we were able to get outside. And one of the tasks he had to do was take down an old, somewhat rotten fence that they had in a cabin out in the back part of their property. And so just kind of manual labor, breaking up wood, ripping things out of the ground and that sort of thing. So that was fun. That's what I spent the last few days of last week doing, and really enjoyed it. So it was nice to be outside.
Yeah, one of the things that Issa and I got to do over the last week was actually go visit Amy's mom at the nursing home, make the drive down to Mount Vernon and visit her. And it's obviously interesting. We're not allowed in. Nobody's allowed in. So you kind of just pull in there, and it's a huge facility. She's at a really big facility. There's rehab and you have the elderly, and there's all these different wings. It was a lot bigger than I was thinking it was going to be. And you just kind of go up to this double doors on this one little side part of the thing, and you see Linda in there, and she actually stood up and she walked I think it was 30 feet or something. And we were kind of just standing out there, waving to her. She got to see Genesis a little bit. And it's definitely a miracle for her for what she's able to do from the last time I had seen her, which was fairly short after the stroke, to now. I mean, it's been an incredible journey for her. No question God's involved in that. So as far as your life at the church, how often are you at the church? Would you say you're spending the same amount of hours at the church as kind of before all of this happened, or kind of what does your week look like as far as activities and things at the actual building?
Pretty close to the same. I'm working from home a little more. It all sort of depends on Amy's work schedule. We're very thankful that she has continued to have work, and so she's never been laid off as a physical therapist assistant, but her hours change, and she sort of our life has been she gets an email on Saturday, and that tells us what our life is going to look like the next week. And so we're sort of living week to week on when her hours are. Now, I will say that is changing. Her facility is now starting to open back up starting this week, actually. So but to this point, it's been week to week. And so if we get the schedule and her work schedule is something that's not good for me, then I just have to be okay with working from home and having the boys play and sort of do their thing and try not to bother me. But that's no different than, I would say, the vast majority of people during this quarantine, you learn to adapt, you make sacrifices, you just sort of figure it out on the fly. And so that's what it's been like. But for the most part, I've been spending, it's still a decent amount of time at the church. Of course, all the recordings that we've been doing for the services are done at the church. And so I'm there for that. And I go to the church on Wednesday evenings to lead the Bible study on Zoom and those sorts of things. But yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting kind of going to the church to do these recordings, like you mentioned, for the videos. I've been doing the editing for the videos and kind of putting everything together. And it's like, by the end of the week, it's like we're putting together this like major production. It feels like every week. It's like getting in there. Okay, it's time to record announcements, and then you got to tear everything down. And then Wednesday comes around and time to record worship. And it's a different setup for worship. And it's like, it feels like almost like a TV crew type thing at the church when all this is going on. It's definitely different. It's out of our elements. But there's also been, I think, a joy in it and kind of an intimacy to be able to do this and connect with the people, even though we're not meeting in person. Yeah. And especially for the worship team, for them, as far as their audience, it's me and one other person. So there's like a total of 5 people in the worship center recording worship. So that's been fun and that's been interesting. But yeah, like you said, going in there on Fridays, recording those sermons, getting everything ready for the video on Sunday has been challenging, but I think it's been good too. I think it's been a good response from people as far as those videos go. But going back to you saying how, Amy's schedule has kind of just been all over the place and how things have been different. That couldn't be more opposite of Issa and I's situation. Our schedule is not changing at all. It's pretty much survive every day with our 10-month-old now. In a week, she's going to be, it's going to be in a couple days. I think she's going to be 10 months old. So she is continuing to change. But as far as our schedule, it's wake up and kind of wrestle with her all day. And do things with her. It was actually funny. The other day we had one of those little mini tubes of M&Ms. They're like mini M&Ms that come in like a tube. And I got Issa one of those at Walmart, and we brought it home, and Issa ate like probably 75% of it, and there was just a little bit in there. But the lid on that thing was pretty hard to pop off. It kind of pops on and off, and Genesis was in her playpen, and I handed it to her as kind of like a rattle, as like a joke. Lisa and I were sitting there, we were talking at the island in the kitchen, and we got distracted, and she was just playing around, and all of a sudden we realized, okay, it's been a little quiet for too long, so we glance over at her playpen, and my child has chocolate all over her face, and somehow she popped off the top of that thing, which I thought, and I assured my wife as well, that was not possible. Because that was the first thing Issa said was, she's going to eat those. I said, there's no way she's going to get the top of this thing off. Well, she did, and she had chocolate all over her face. So my 10-month-old has had M&Ms. Yep. That's kind of been the highlight of the last couple of weeks for us. Moving on, we mentioned last week we were going to talk about a little bit of the MIP of the Old Testament. I had mentioned how I was kind of, trying to get into the Old Testament more and learn more about the Old Testament and really actually dive into it outside of just the surface knowledge that I have of it. And we kind of decided we were going to come up with the NIP, which was like, the most impactful, the most inspirational person of the Old Testament. And how about this? How about we go 1, 2, 3 and say who we picked at the exact same time? 1, 2, 3. Noah. No way. Are you kidding me? You seriously picked Noah?
Yep.
Okay, so why do you feel Noah was the most inspirational or the most impactful of the Old Testament?
Well, other than it's the name of my firstborn son, but
I can't believe you picked Noah. Are you kidding me?
One thing too, I think that's
I thought I was going to be solo on that. I didn't think you would pick it. One thing I think
that's worth noting as we sort of discuss this, you have to pick one, right? That's the whole name of this thing. So it's kind of just for fun, and not picking someone. We pick someone solely for the purpose of having, or solely for the idea of having to pick one person. So like the fact that we both pick Noah isn't saying like, oh, Adam isn't important or Abraham isn't important.
Yeah, the whole surface of this is lighthearted.
It's very, very lighthearted. We're not being negative on any other people in the Bible. But
if you made the cut to be in the Bible, there's some significance to your name. Yeah. So we're just doing this, for entertainment.
So, a few things about Noah that really stuck out to me. He was incredibly obedient, right? To think about what he had to go through. I'm making a few assumptions here, but I think they're safe assumptions. building a giant boat and telling everyone around you that
The world's ending.
the world's ending by flood, I have to imagine or assume that he got all kinds of crap from
Yeah.
people. And so to be obedient in the midst of
Embarrassment.
and disbelief and just, totally going against what everybody around you.
And what was the exact length it took him to build it? It was
So the Bible isn't specific. It's not clear. I looked that up just to remind myself in preparation of this. Most commentators say it was probably around 70 years.
oh my good grief.
And just as a side note, where if you haven't been to the Ark Encounter, which Noah's Ark Encounter down in Kentucky, they've got a great website that it's in conjunction with the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum, and so you can get on there. And I would encourage people that are listening to make sure that they do that, to jump on that site for the Ark Encounter, because it really gives the biblical view of Noah and the Ark and all that. But yeah, most commentators and the creators of the Ark, kind of fall down on around 70 years. So just imagine how long that was. How long that's literally a lifetime for us.
I mean, yeah,
And-
that's obvious. I mean, that's more than double the life that we've spent on Earth.
Yes.
And obviously back then, they lived longer than we do now. But I mean, yeah, 70 years to build a boat, and then you add in the fact, like you said, he's probably getting mocked. He's probably getting made fun of. I mean, at what point does he really start? I mean, he had to have questioned things and kind of went back and forth with God a little bit. I mean, over a 70-year period. At what point do you not just throw in the towel? So to
Right.
your point of obedience,
Yeah.
I mean, that is like the max obedience to,
Yep.
take that kind of ridicule. I mean, what, after like 15 years, aren't you like exhausted and you like barely have the front of the boat built and you're
Yeah.
just like, dude, like I'm done with this.
Yep.
But yet, you have another 50 years of doing that.
Obedience in the face of criticism. And that's something, I guess an underlying reason why we would even debate something silly like this, the most important person of the Old Testament, is so that people can be inspired and encouraged by these stories, right? And so obedience in the face of criticism, the criticism that we face, could be significant, but most likely not nearly as significant as what Noah faced. And in the midst of that, he remained faithful. He remained obedient. And so that's one of the main reasons why at least I came up with Noah. And I think along with obedience in the face of criticism, it goes along, perseverance. He was very detailed. If you look at Genesis chapter 6, which is kind of where you start to see the story of Noah, the details that God gave him on how to build the ark are extensive and they're detailed. And it required him to follow a specific set of, rules. And so
I wonder
he was
how many
very-
mistakes he made. Like how many times did he screw up and have to like restart?
Yeah. Or like the hammer misses and he busts his thumb and he's like,
Yeah,
trying
out
to-
of commission for a few
Yeah,
weeks because he
right.
broke his finger. I mean, yeah, and go when you think of the longevity of it too, I feel like a lot of the focus can be on building the ark and leading up to the flood, but an incredible amount of responsibility and things during the flood. Like he's taking care of and finding systems and ways to feed all of these animals, to get rid of their waste. I mean, there's so many details and systems and pulleys and I mean, there were so many things he also had to do. It's not like he got on the boat and was like, okay, time to chill, for 40 days while the earth floods after spending 7. Like, no, it was almost like by the time he actually got on the boat, it was just beginning. I mean, the real work was getting ready to start of managing this and surviving, a worldwide flood. So I think a lot of times the focus can be on, leading up to it. But I mean, a lot of obedience went into it after.
And again, it's going to sound like a commercial for the Ark Encounter, but I've been there twice and plan on going back many times throughout my life because it's such an amazing place. But it paints the picture in a much more extensive way than what we get from simply reading the account in the Bible.
Right.
You mentioned, well, how do they get rid of the waste? How do they make sure the animals have food and water? And all those things are spelled out when you go and visit the Ark, and it's an amazing trip. And
Right.
I can't speak highly enough about the Ark Encounter down in Kentucky, and just really encourage people, if you haven't been, whenever all this is over and we're allowed to leave our homes and go places again, encourage you to make a trip down to Kentucky.
And you don't have to drive to Florida or California or Wisconsin. I mean, literally we're a few short hours away from it. And when we went a few years ago, I kind of went into it, the whole story of, Noah's Ark and stuff on a very simple level, of obviously knowing what it was about. But as an adult, the skepticism, I guess, creeped into me of like, okay, yes, this is a story in the Bible. Outside of me simply believing that it's true because I believe the Bible, how did this actually happen? Like, this seems far-fetched. And when you go through the Ark encounter, they miss nothing. Like, any question you have of like, well, how did they do this? Or how could this possibly have happened? Or who was on and who was not on and what? And I mean, it's answered and laid out perfectly. And I walked out of there going like, I believed this on faith before, but having it like spelled out so clearly of going through that encounter, to me, really opened my eyes of like, this really did happen. Yeah. I mean, this was something that actually happened and it was possible. And yeah, like you said, I mean, yeah, we're getting a whole bunch of free ads here to the Ark. Yeah. But wow, I mean, it's mind blowing to go through an experience like that.
He was an animal lover. That's another reason. I love animals. I love my dog. I don't know what I would do without my boxer Lulu. And Noah clearly had to have a love, or at least an appreciation for animals. So there's another reason.
Yeah, and if he didn't, it just goes back to how obedient he was. Because if he didn't like animals, well, for crying out loud, he's gonna have to learn how to do that. Yep. So wow, I was thinking we would come up with somebody different. I didn't really want to know before we recorded who you picked. I thought I was gonna be solo with Noah. But obviously we picked the same one, and a heck of a lot of good reasons is why we thought he could at least be considered, the MIP of the Old Testament. We also mentioned last week we were going to go in and have a little bit of a draft as far as trying to get into a draft of who we think were other, obviously impactful people of the Old Testament and why we think they were impactful. But when we go into actually drafting, I decided I was going to flip a coin on seeing who gets the number one pick, which is clearly now going to be Noah if it goes on any of the discussion we just had. So a flip of the coin, and what do you got?
Heads.
It is heads. Okay, so you win twice already in this episode. So I'm assuming with your first pick, you are going to go ahead and take
Noah.
Shocker. Wow. Whole bunch of suspense on that one. Okay, so you're going to take Noah with the first one. I have a list here in order of who I kind of wanted to take. But now I'm overthinking it just like I would if this was a fantasy football draft, and I'm trying to think who you're going to want to take, and I'm going to try to one-up you here. So I'm going to go ahead and follow my list for now. So for my first pick, I am going to take Abraham.
Okay.
I'm going to take Abraham. It goes on the obedience thing. I feel like you can always count on him. I feel like he had great stamina and longevity as far as his relationship with God. Very few injuries, not a whole lot of mistakes in his walk with God. Willing to sacrifice his son, as we know God would later do himself. And now that I have a child, that speaks volumes to me.
Yep.
That Abraham, obviously the father of many nations, but to go out and be willing to sacrifice his son, that spoke volumes to me. So give me Abraham with my first pick.
Well, if you just look at the top two, we've got now my team captain, Noah, your team captain, Abraham. Not a bad start. I think that sounds pretty good.
If we move on, because those are two very, very big ones.
Yep.
Those are very big players in the Old Testament. Now I feel like we're kind of going down into that secondary kind of level if you evaluate the talent of the Old Testament as we're doing. So if you're going to go ahead and take your second pick, who would you like?
I've got a list here, and I'm looking down through it, and I'm going to go with Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah has his own book of the
Interesting.
Bible. Nehemiah was someone that I think has incredible leadership skills. And if you're thinking about a draft, you're putting a team together. Noah is the steadfast. He is the one that is going to follow the rules and follow the playbook and do what needs to be done. He has the perseverance, right? Nehemiah is the point guard, right? He's the
Okay.
one that is sort of directing everything. He's got great leadership skills. He had the ability, if you know about his story, to assemble a great team, to convince other people to come alongside him and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He was incredibly efficient. He made it happen in a relatively short period of time. And so I'm going with Nehemiah for my second pick.
Very good reasons. Very interesting reasons of the leadership. Is that something that I left off my criteria? I'm not sure. But you're right. Every team needs a leader. You need somebody to kind of take control of things outside of your captain. So with my second pick, I'm going out of order now. I'm not going to take number 3 on my list. I'm going to jump down and I'm going to take number 4. Give me Isaiah. One of the most influential prophets of the Bible. Some of his biggest prophecies were the virgin birth of Jesus, that there would be a son that would be called God, that would perform miracles, the suffering of God's servant for the sins of his people, all referring obviously to Jesus, who, without a question, is the MVP of the entire Bible.
Yep.
And I feel like the validity of Jesus and his life and his story, a lot of it was prophesied by Isaiah. A lot of major points and things that you read in the Old Testament obviously come to fruition in the New Testament with Jesus. I think he's going to go ahead and play 2 guard for me. I don't think he's going to be my point guard, but I think he's going to be my second main scorer next to Abraham. I think he's big time, and I think with that 1-2 punch, I might be set, and I could literally take anyone for number 3.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to disagree. Again, it's lighthearted. We're having fun. Isaiah is a great one of the major prophets in the Old Testament. For my third pick, I'm going out in left field, and I'm going to say a name that, if I had to guess, some of our listeners may have never even heard of this name, or if they've heard of it, they're going to go, "Who in the world is this person?" And I'll give you the reason why after I shout him out here. So my third pick for my draft here is Methuselah.
Yikes.
Yep.
Spell that.
Having a little bit of fun. Methusaleh, Methuselah. And here's the reason why. Methuselah is the person in the Bible that is recorded as being the oldest. So he lived the longest. He has longevity, and we all know that with age comes wisdom. A slow and steady life. He lived to be 969 years old.
Yikes.
So I'm going with Old Faithful, 969-year-old Methuselah. With age comes wisdom. You always have to have the wise sage on the team.
Is he coaching or is he playing?
No, he can still lace him up, man. He's 900. He lived to be 969. I think he's got it. Again, a little bit of a out in left field pick, but I'm going with Noah, Nehemiah, and Methuselah.
Now that you went out into left field, you have piqued my interest. And it kind of makes me want to go out into left field because I feel like if I go down my list, I'm going to be the clear-cut favorite here. So I'm going to actually jump down my list. I'm going to pass up 3. I'm going to pass up my number 5. I'm going to pass up my number... Oh, boy. Do I want to take 6 or 7 here on my list? I'm going to get weird. Let's go down and take my number 7. Give me Samson. Now, going on the analogy of having a team, I believe he's going to be my Dennis Rodman or my
The hair.
Bill Laimbeer.
Okay.
Of just brute strength. Now, he has his weaknesses. If we have cheerleaders on our team, he could get distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he's going to have his weaknesses, but he's also going to be intimidating. He's going to be the big guy down in the middle, and really he's going to play the Shaq role. He's going to dunk, he's going to get rebounds, and he's going to dish it out to Isaiah and Abraham in this 3-on-3 matchup. I didn't think I would go that far down into my list, but you went Methuselah, so give me Samson.
It's a good thing we were doing the basketball analogy, because if we would have been talking baseball and he got traded to the Yankees, the hair's getting cut because you have to have it be clean cut, and then you're in trouble if you're Samson. So,
well, yeah, if we were doing baseball, I would be in trouble most definitely. But I think you would also be in trouble with Methuselah if we were doing baseball, because he ain't gonna be able to do nothing being 969 years old.
Look forward to hearing if anybody has any comments on who they think has the better team. Again, I am Noah, Nehemiah, and with age comes wisdom, Methuselah.
And lacing them up in the 3-on-3 contest, getting ball first because you had the first pick, is going to be Abraham, Isaiah, and Samson. Obviously, other guys I had on my list, I had David, I had Job, I had Elijah, and I had Daniel as some other guys that I was willing to take.
It's
on
worth
my
mentioning
team.
as an honorable mention, none of these people that we've mentioned are possible without Adam.
Yeah, I thought Adam, he was an early thought for me for NIP, but then I thought, does he really get the vote for MIP? I mean, he was just like created. He was just the first person ever. Like,
Without Adam, you have no Noah, you have no Abraham.
but all he did was exist out of the gate.
Well, yeah, but
These other guys, man, they've been through the fire. Adam was spoon-fed, man. He was created from God right out of the gate. He lived in a perfect world right out of the gate. I don't know.
And he had his flaws, as all of the men did, but
Yeah. So Adam, yeah, interesting. None of us would exist without him, but you could argue none of us would exist without Noah either, because if Noah hadn't been obedient, everybody would have went down in the flood. So, yeah, some good stuff. Like you said, Josh has Noah, Nehemiah, and Methuselah. I have Abraham, Isaiah, and Samson. And to stay in the Old Testament, last week, Josh, you mentioned how the Psalms was something that helped keep you motivated, and something that you were really reading during all this, stay at home and time off and things like that. So I wanted to go back to you for a verse that has stuck out to you in the last week that you really enjoyed, kind of for our scripture here again, how the Psalms can help keep you motivated. What do you have?
Psalm 56 is a great one that I spent some time reading the last couple of days, and it starts off by saying, "Be merciful to me, O God, for men hotly pursue me." All day long, they press their attack. And when I first read that, I thought, well, I don't really have what I would consider enemies. Obviously, the writer of this, David, was a warrior. And so I imagine as he's writing this, he has images in his mind of, literal, not figurative, literal men attacking him. So I don't know that I can necessarily relate specifically to that. I've never been under physical attack. But I think as I apply that to my life, and I think as all of us apply...
I mean, side note, I have physically attacked you at some point in my life.
Well...
Maybe not like what David had coming.
Right. But, this idea of being pursued and being attacked, I think all of us would probably agree that what we're experiencing now isn't as much physical. It's mental. It's a mental game that we're playing, trying to just stay motivated, trying to not pull our hair out because we're stuck in the house and we can't go places. It's a mental game, and I just feel like all of us can relate to feeling like it is just day after day after day of just the same old thing, that mental grind that we're all experiencing as we're stuck in our house. And I think what's cool is he continues in verse 3 and says, "When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I will not be afraid. What can mortal man do to me?" And, we're just living in a time where, yeah, fear is one of those emotions that are
Holding a lot of people
Yes.
back.
yes, and I think we can be encouraged from Psalm 56 that in God we will trust. We will not be afraid. Really, what can the stay-at-home orders do to us? What can the quarantines do to us? What can coronavirus, really ultimately do to us? Nothing that wouldn't have been done before coronavirus, right? What can it do? Well, let's be realistic. It could take us out. It could be
Right.
what kills us. People are dying from coronavirus, right? I'm not making light of that. I'm saying that as a reality, right? What could it do? It could take us out. Okay, but if we have put our faith and trust in God, physically ending our lives, whether it's through coronavirus or through any other means, that's not the end.
Right.
That's not reason necessarily to live in fear, because if you know where you're going for eternity, if you know where you're going when this physical life is over, then we really should not fear death, right?
Right. And that's deep and that's tough.
Yeah.
And even for Christians who believe that they know where they're going after death, that's a tough one. It's still it's intimidating, but like you said, if you truly believe, that Jesus died for our sins, and if we believe and trust in him that we're going to heaven, it's not something we should fear, because in reality, where we're going after here is going to be a heck of a lot better than where we're at. So, I mean, but that's a tough one to swallow.
And he ends chapter 56 of Psalm by saying, "For you have delivered me from death and my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before God in the light of life." Again, I think pointing to what we just basically said, right? We will be delivered. And so hopefully that's encouraging to you, and you're finding encouragement in the Psalms during this time.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's impactful. I think it's a way to remind people, in these times where a lot of stuff, whether it be media, whether it be friends, family, a lot of stuff can be fear-driven, and a lot of people fail to reach their potential, myself included at times in my life, for fear of failing, or fear of, like you said, death, things like that. So, fear being the main component there, it's something that holds people back in a major way.
Let me throw a quick shout out to something, if you don't mind here, real quick. Something that I've discovered in the last week that I was going to mention at the top of the show, but was just reminded because the notification came onto my phone. I found this new app, and it's called the Daily Prayer app. If you're looking it up in the App Store, has like a little kind of image of almost looks like a sun with rays, but it's called the Daily Prayer app, and you can set it up to where it reminds you 4 times a day to pray, and so the notification pops up. You set the times that you want it to, like an early morning prayer, a midday prayer, an evening prayer, and then a kind of before bed prayer. And I've found it to be really cool because we get busy, and it's just nice to have that simple reminder.
Sure.
It's almost like an alarm that, hey, have you prayed lately? And so again, you set up your own times, and it's got scripture with it, and it has prayers, and the app is really easy to navigate. And so like I said, it's only been
simple?
for the very, very simple, very simple. Again, it's called the Daily Prayer app. It's got an orange symbol with a little sun, half sun looking thing. But I think part of this podcast is to give you different content, encourage you in some way. And I think part of doing that is just letting you know resources that are out there. And so I wanted to share that at the top, forgot. And literally, as we're sitting here doing this, my evening reminder popped up on my phone, my notification. And so I wanted to shout that out.
Good stuff. Moving on away from the Psalms and into what I am most excited to debate during this episode of the podcast is cereal. I am a big-time cereal lover. I've eaten cereal at all times of the day, from the time I was a child to just yesterday. I had a bowl of cereal at night. I love cereal. I love milk. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of get your perspective and mine as well. And it was really actually hard for me. Of all of the things I prepared for this episode, I struggled the most with this, because when I had to pinpoint only 3 cereals, I got a little bit of anxiety, and I was like, I can't decide on what my favorite cereal is. And I don't know if I'm being too light about it or if I need to be more serious. And I thought about, what is the longevity of the cereal? Could I eat this every single day? I mean, I threw out categories in my mind of like, how do I really pinpoint this down to 3? So number 1 that I wrote down on my list, and I don't know if this is a cop-out or not, but I put the series kind of in it, but Captain Crunch. I put down as my number 1, and the cop-out is give me berries, give me the all berries, give me Berries Crunch, the normal kind, give me the original Captain Crunch, and let me cut the top of my mouth with every bite. That's fine.
I was just going to say I disagree because that one tears up your mouth.
It does, and they've altered the way they make it a little bit, and the bites are a little more round nowadays, which is nice. But I'm okay with cutting the top of my mouth, but my top one would be Peanut Butter Crunch. That's my fave, but all the Captain Crunch series can never go wrong. It's consistent, and I could eat that every day, at least one of those. So give me that for number 1.
I'm not sure which is going to be more hotly contested in our listeners, the 3-on-3 draft of players from the Old Testament or our top 3 cereals here.
Well, I hope we don't have any of the same in the top 3, but that's
we're just going to have to find out. So here's my number 1 top 3 favorite cereal, s'mores.
What?
Have you had the s'mores?
What?
I think it's made by Post, and it's got 3 different.
That's like some weird new fad
it's been
thing.
around for years. It's got 3 things. It's got the marshmallow, which is a crucial thing in my opinion. For cereal.
Okay.
So
and
the
then
marshmallow,
it's got the squares,
and then it's got the graham square, which is kind of like honey grams.
Okay.
And then it's got the chocolate circle or ball. And it is absolutely out of this world. Again,
I've had it
longevity,
before, but I am shocked that is what you put at number 1.
It is hands down. It gets the honey graham kind of thing. It gets the
chocolate
thing.
You wouldn't get annoyed with chocolate at some point.
No. It's amazing. And the milk, and
oh boy, chocolate
unmentioned
milk.
thing is what is left over afterwards for the final drink. Right,
Okay.
and so this one leaves an amazing.
And by the way,
if you
don't drink the milk when your cereal's done, then don't bother getting in this discussion.
Yeah, you're
at
out.
all. You're out automatically. You finish your bowl of cereal, that is included drinking the milk.
Yep.
Moving on to number 2 on my list, which I'm shocked that was your number 1. But number 2 on my list, and this one was hard, really hard for me. I went back and forth with 2 and 3, but I put this number 2. It is Golden Grams.
Okay, well, see right there. I mean, here we go. You're saying number
right,
2
and
is
you
Golden.
threw out a number 1 that has it, but those ain't the same as Golden Grams. Golden Grams are classic. I ate those when I was a child. I don't buy them that often. I'm not sure why. They're on my list here, and I'm admitting I don't buy them that often. But when I do, I mean, I can mash Golden Grams. They are so good. They don't get soggy too quick. They got the right amount of crunch.
And even when they get soggy, they're
great.
Top notch.
Yes. So Golden Grams, without a question, number 2 on my list. Another way that I threw out to remind myself of how to break this down was give me my 3 cereals that I cannot go without. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't imagine a life where I could never eat another bowl of Golden Grams, so they had to go in the list.
Yeah. Golden Grams is a tough choice. I'm going Old Man cereal.
Oh, if you get my number 3 right now, I'm about to be mad.
Well, it's just been a thing. Now, I'll preface it by saying it's considered a healthy cereal, but it has to have like a half a cup of sugar.
I got a couple of honorable mentions if I have to throw it in here.
Right. So the sugar on this particular cereal,
like actual, you're saying you're putting in actual sugar yourself.
Actual sugar myself.
Okay.
And it collects on the bottom, and it's a nice bite when you are able to scrape it off the bottom and get a decent amount of sugar. But
I think I know where you're going.
Bran Flakes.
Bran Flakes.
Gotta love the occasional bowl of Bran Flakes. There's just something
you're right.
about
You gotta
that
have
taste.
sugar.
Yeah.
You gotta have sugar. And if the sugar collects at the bottom, you're right, that scoop to get in. And I do enjoy me some Bran Flakes, no question. Pretty high on the list to throw Bran Flakes out there.
Hey.
They're good. They're good, no doubt. But top 3, tough one. I'm going to go for my 3rd and final one that made the cut. And again, I was stressed all week trying to get this number down for me. But this is one that I had to really think, okay, what cereal do I buy all the time? What is something that, whether I'm at a Walmart or I'm at a Dollar General or I'm wherever I am, what is a cereal I can count on that's going to fill me up and is going to be good? And I also factored in, as you've already mentioned, the end of the bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Give me, for number 3, Frosted Shredded Wheats.
Wow. Okay. Surprising. There's one that you left off that's my number 3 that I was for sure was going to be your number 3. And actually, Frosted Shredded Wheat is my honorable mention.
Okay. So we're in agreement there.
We're
it's
somewhat
a top
in agreement.
5.
Yeah.
And the very last bowl of Frosted Shredded Wheats is the bomb.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get all of like the crumbs
Yeah.
at the bottom that collect, and it's
Yeah.
like shredded, like the little squares are just like shredded
Yeah.
up. And
Yeah.
you eat that, and half your bowl is just like milk and all those tiny
Yeah.
little pieces.
And that bite of the Frosted Shredded Wheat that has like
double the amount of frost.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So Frosted Shredded Wheats made my cut, and I put them in at number 3.
I'm surprised my number 3 wasn't on yours. Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch is number 1 on my honorable mention.
Yeah. Yeah. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is it, man. It's again, thinking about that milk, the drink of milk following, it's amazing. The first bite is always so good, and as they get soggy, those are just they continue to be good. Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I looked up on the internet because I was curious on just like top selling cereals, and I went to like 4 different sites, and some sites were like top 25, top 50, whatever. Like on 3 or 4 different sites, no matter what, I believe it was in top 10 with Cinnamon Toast Crunch as far as like they sell the most.
Mm-hmm.
And they also now, have you had the chocolate Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
Mm-mm.
There's a chocolate Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which is basically like normal Cinnamon Toast Crunch with just a hint of chocolate, which is very good as well. I had another honorable mention. I put Reese's Puffs. I can't go all the time with Reese's Puffs, but every once in a while they're good.
They're the ones that kind of leave that film on the top of on the roof of your mouth. It's like
a
a little
bit. You got to eat them a little bit quick. I'm not a huge fan when they get soggy, but I do enjoy Reese's Puffs. And then I put together 3 gross cereals.
Okay. This is easy for me.
One of them I've never eaten, but I can't possibly imagine is good. I walked through the other day in Walmart, and I went through the cereal aisle knowing and preparing for this and just gazing and being nostalgic about old cereals and things. French Toast Crunch, that just popped in my head with the little pieces of it that look like toast.
Yeah.
Those were amazing as a kid. But I saw something up there, and I had to look at it for like a solid 30 seconds and debate who in their right mind decided that this would taste good as a cereal with milk. And I was very, very confused. But this was a legitimate cereal. Sour Patch Kids.
Oh, Lord. Oof.
Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah.
How could that taste good? And I'm not assuming that they actually put like the sour stuff in, but like even just a gummy. Like who thought that was a good idea? And somebody's clearly purchasing Sour Patch Kid cereal.
Well, just
take
yourself back to when you were 12 years old. You're going to try a bowl of Sour Patch cereal if you see it.
I mean, yeah,
that's who's buying
like,
it, is the 12, 13, 14-year-old dudes that are just like, oh, I want to try this. Yeah, that's who's buying it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, there's too many of them because if it's on the shelf, then somebody's buying it.
Yeah.
My goodness. I couldn't believe that existed.
For me, it's simple, and I can't believe both of my sons like these kinds of cereals. But
oh, my gosh. I know. Fruit cereal. Oh, dude. We are in agreement.
Pebbles, Fruit Loops, get away from me. I want nothing to do with Fruit Loops, Fruity Pebbles. They're awful. They're awful.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with them.
Awful, yes. Can I eat them if I had to? Yes. But yeah, I agree with they're gross. I only say that because a hotel Issa and I had to stay at in Honduras one time. The only option they had was it was either cereal or wait in this giant line for waffles, and I got cereal, and it was, I think, is Fruit Loops the circles?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Fruity Pebbles are like the flake things.
Yeah, that are like Rice Krispies or whatever, which those are good with milk and sugar too. But yeah, and I had the Fruit Loops, and I ate them, and it was like whatever, but I was just like, it's so to me. Fruit cereal.
Anything fruit is...
The other one I had down was just shredded wheats, which those actually exist without the frost, because that to me is gross. And then this one actually made your top list, but add in raisins, Raisin Bran.
Oh yeah,
gross. I don't want soft raisins every once in a while. And if you haven't done this, that's okay. I will go ahead and admit it. At some point, I remember as a kid, mom and dad buying Raisin Bran, and I literally sat there and took the time to take the raisins out because I'm like, I'm not going to get a surprise raisin in my mouth.
Yeah.
No, thank you. So cereals, again, Josh's top 3 were?
S'mores, Bran Flakes, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, with Frosted Shredded Wheat as my honorable mention.
And my top 3 were the Captain Crunch series, Golden Grahams, and Frosted Shredded Wheats, especially the last bowl of the box. Well, I think that's going to be about wrap it up here for episode 2 of the C3 Sit Down. We hope you enjoyed the episode. We look forward to our episode next week. Again, these are posted on Thursdays, right around noontime on Thursday on Facebook, so keep an eye out for that. Share it, spread the word. We're trying to get as many listeners as we can with the goal of leading people towards Jesus. So until next time, any final thoughts on your lesser team and list of cereal than mine?
Not in that direction. I want to shout out my wife, Amy. She did a great job. If hopefully everybody listening to this tuned into our service on Sunday, Mother's Day. My wife, Amy, preached her first ever sermon, and she did a wonderful job, so just want to give her a shout out.
Yes, awesome sermon from Amy. It was really fun editing that and putting that together. Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 2 of the C3 Sit Down. Make sure you tune in to next week's episode where Josh and I continue our journey in the Old Testament. More motivation from the Psalms, and we'll discuss what church will look like when we all eventually return. Until then, stay safe and do something nice for somebody this week. But remember, pick out the raisins in the Raisin Bran. You don't want any surprises.